check that it's recording. It is. Okay. Hello, I'm Mike Naylor, and I'm delighted to be able to talk to a fully qualified survivor of the music business. He's been a professional musician for over 50 years, releasing over 40 albums, straddling folk, ragtime, jazz, blues, and rock, a real versatile performer and songwriter. It's Michael Chapman, and a new triple CD has just been released called The Decca Years, 1974 to 1977. 3 albums by Michael reissued: Deal Gone Down, Savage Amusement, and The Man Who Hated Mornings. It is a terrific collection and includes several bonus demos. So in all, there are 50 tracks on this collection. Michael, welcome. Thank you for being with us. How are you?
No bother. It's nice to be here.
So
you just reminded me that I'm still alive.
Whose idea was this? You know, how did the idea for reissuing these as a triple CD come about?
That was probably Clive at Secret. I've had an ongoing relationship with them for quite a number of years now. They're really good people. They always put out real quality products. You know, I mean, it looks good, doesn't it? I mean,
it does look brilliant.
Yeah. And it sounds good. I think they did a little bit of remastering, but not a lot.
So it had a bit of remastering, did they? A little bit, yeah?
Yeah, just here and there. You know, it's not like taking it to bits and putting it back together again.
I was wondering how much you can actually remember about, say, either writing the songs and going into the studio to record these albums. Is it still fresh in your mind? Because we're going away.
It's amazing, considering the amount of self-inflicted damage, how much I do remember. My short-term memory is shot out, you know, but I can remember making these records and the whys and whens and wherefores. You know.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk about that. But what was your general approach to making an album and songwriting? I mean, did you do it all in one block 3 weeks before the studio was booked, or were you a guy that?
No. I'm a dribs and drabs kind of person. I do what I can. I don't mind whether the lyrics comes first, and the music comes first, the production values come first. I don't care. I just do whatever I can when I can, you know. And I usually, I mean, I would never. Ever since the first days with EMI Harvest, I've never had a deadline, because I basically I don't want to do deadlines. My feeling is they just might kill the creative instinct. You know, they might force you to do something too fast and you've missed it. You know. So never having had a deadline, I just wait until I've got a bunch of songs and then think, well, what kind of music goes with, what kind of, you know, values, musical values do I want to go with that, you know. When I did Savage Amusement, you know, which was, I always call the Memphis album because it was produced by Don Nixon. And it was a pretty heavy-duty rock album, you know, and everybody thought I would follow it up by, I don't know, doing another one like that. And I did a very acoustic record because that was the way the songs went, you know, they were very acoustic based. And I remember the headline in one of the music papers, "The Man Who Was Too Laid Back." You know, well, I thought that was a bit cruel. There's a difference between laid back and lazy. You know.
But what you're saying is that you never had any sort of pressure from the record company to say, we want you to...
No, I wouldn't allow it.
No, good.
I mean, I'm signed to Paradise of Bachelors in the States, you know, and they wanted me to sign for 2 albums, and I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't know whether I've got enough left in me to write 2 albums. I've written 1, that's what we'll do. And they were a bit pissed off about that because it gives them some leeway on all kinds of financial things. And their finances never bothered me. So that was up to them. So I won't let people lean on me. And as soon as they try that, they just make sure they know they're backing up the wrong tree.
Excellent. Well, let's go through these 3 albums one by one, if we may. So
Sure.
Deal Gone Down is the first of this triple CD, was originally released in 1974. It was album number 6 in your sort of extensive back catalogue.
Yeah.
You produced it, and you brought in Rick Kemp on the bass, Nigel Pegram on drums, and Maddie Pryor on backing vocals, along with Bridget St. John and Prelude. So you have quite a lot of Steel Eye Span there. And, you know, prior to that, you've been with Harvest, as you say, and some of those records feature Mick Ronson on guitar and Paul Buckmaster with the strings, produced by Gus Dudgeon, who worked with Bowie and Elton John. So you produced this. You had actually done electric songs before, but this, I guess, was what, cementing a combination of acoustic guitar and electric guitar, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one for sitting and practicing all day long. You know, I'm a fairly scruffy player, but I like the human end of it. You know, I mean, a lot of my blues heroes, you know, they weren't great technicians. They just had something to say.
Uh-huh.
I think is the way I have approached it. Let's get it said. And I wanted Deal Gone Down to be really simple. And it's just a bunch of friends. I mean, all the people on it are just friends of mine. I didn't know Nigel very well, but sometimes when you're doing an album, you think, oh yeah, I really want so-and-so to play bass, or I really want so-and-so to play drums. And you say, well, if he's a drummer, you say, who's the bass player you want to work with? Because they have to be a cohesive team. And if it's a bass player, you say, who's the drummer you want to work with? And Rick brought in Nigel Pegram from Steel Eye, who would not have been my choice, I must admit. But, you know, Rick was happy with it. And apart from Nigel, they were all people that I knew, you know. And so I could go into the studio in an atmosphere of trust. I know they're not going to let me down. I know they're not going to start saying, I think you should do it this way, because that gets them the bum's rush.
There's some fantastic songs on here. I enjoy Party Pieces, which I guess is sort of hanging around too much or too long at a party. Another.
It's one of my many drunk songs.
Another Season song is a beautiful melodic arrangement with electric guitar over the top. And then you've got this beautiful, soft, gentle acoustic love song, A Stranger Passing By, a rambler living hand to mouth. Was that about somebody you knew, or was that a bit autobiographical?
No, it's me. It's like at that point, and Andrew didn't always want to come with me on the road. She was in the middle of like being at college and not being at college, and I'm a solo act. You spend a lot of time on your own, whether you want to or not. It's part of the deal. And it's yeah. I sometimes see myself in the mirror like a stranger passing by. It's like you come home and you go, oh shit, well, this is all right, and then you're gone the next morning.
So when you'd made this album when it came out, I mean, you must have considered it an artistic success, right? You must have been pleased with it, yeah? Or do you kind of, I mean, you didn't sort of go back and keep tinkering with the arrangements and
No.
editing?
No, it's always the same with me. I go in, I do the work, and I go home. Yeah. I mean, I used to be so lucky that there was a studio 8 miles up the road that I'd put money into because it was in my interest for him to be there. And that was the thing, you see. You know, it's 8 miles away, so I'd get in the car, I'd drive to the studio, I'd do the work, and I'd drive home, and that was it. People said, why don't you just have a studio in the house? You know, and you've got a big enough house, you know, you can put one in the other room. No. Everybody I know that had a studio in their house never finished anything because they could always do another mix in the morning. So I just said, no, I'm not having it. Rick wanted to record an album, and he tried 3 or 4 places, and we were just having a drink one night, and he says, "You know where I want to do my album, don't you?" I said, "I haven't got a clue, mate." He says, "In your front room." I went, "Oh no, please." And he talked me into it, and I hated it. It was like he destroyed my house for a week.
Now, the banjo song on the Deal Gone Down album was, I believe, a single. It's a mixture of rock and blues and nice electric sound, a bit like Lynyrd Skynyrd. It was played a lot on Radio 1 by Johnny Walker, wasn't it, I'm told?
It was it was odd. Johnny really took to it, he hammered it. But I was in hospital with this mystery disease. I was in isolation in hospital down the road. And he said on the radio, "Does anybody know who this guy is?" And Andrew was trying to ring up and get through to his producer or whatever to say, "But we know who he is, but he might be dying."
Oh.
So it was, I couldn't get out to promote it. You know, with that kind of airplay that I was getting, if I'd have been around, if I could have got out of bed, basically, things might have been different.
Well, there's an interesting story on the sleeve notes about one other track on the album called Journeyman. I don't know if you can recall this. It was inspired what you were supporting Black Sabbath, and there was a tantrum. You lost a coat.
Oh. No. Black Sabbath was supporting me.
Ah.
They're one of my many support acts that have done quite well. Like Wishbone Ash, Camel, all kinds of people. They all started off opening for me. We were in Paris at the Olympia, and it was very odd because it was in the round, and the French had built this really strange PA. And anyway, we did our sound check, and then they did theirs because they were going to open the show, so they got the last sound check. And I went and sat about four rows back from the stage, and their manager at the time, Big Jim Simpson, I think he was, came down and sat beside me and said, "Oh, I would have sit there if I was you. Not very good, but they're fucking loud."
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, look what happened. Yeah. And somebody, I'd bought a Levi jacket, the perfect worn out Levi jacket for £1 in the thrift shop. And some froggy filched it, and I just blew it. I sacked them all, everybody. The Rob crew, the missus, the band, fuck off. And suddenly woke up in Paris going, "Oh shit, I shouldn't have done that."
Well, let's move on to the second album in this collection of three then. Savage Amusement from 1976. As you mentioned, it was produced by Don Nix. He worked at Stax Records in America, and it was recorded in Cornwall, in London and Memphis. But again, Andrew, on the sleeve notes, makes this amazing story about how when you first met him, it was a bit of a tense meeting at your house, and then you had to drive to Cornwall. How come he was brought in to produce the album, really?
I've done 2 very long tours with John Mayall, opening for John, which were great. John he's the only person I ever know that's paid a support act a bonus at the end of the tour. True gentleman, John.
Wow, that is unusual.
And I knew that he'd done an album in California produced by Don. And so I rang John up and I said, I've always loved Don Nix, the sound of Don Nix records. He has a certain kind of clarity that nobody else seems to get. And I said, do you think me and him would get on? John says, "You and him were designed for each other." So we did a deal with Don, and he came over. It started off in a very odd manner because by the time he got on well, first of all, he stayed in a hotel in London, which happened to be next door to the Russian embassy, which Don tried to invade. because he's a complete redneck. And so things got off badly between him and Keith over drugs or cooking. I don't know, over what, I wasn't there. And he got on the plane and came up to Newcastle, and I picked him up at the airport. But he was traveling with this guy who was a male nurse. And on the way up, this guy was kind of weeping and sorry. And so Don said, "There, have one of these." And he gave him his last quaalude. And they shared a small bottle of cognac. So by the time they got to Newcastle, they were a bit dazed and confused. And we met the family of this nurse guy who were going to a funeral, but we got dragged into the funeral party. We couldn't think of a polite way to get away. So I'm standing there with Don Mix, who's in Vietnam battle fatigues and a cane, right, and obviously deranged. I finally persuaded him into the car. And there's a road from the airport to our house. It's the greatest drive to go to work ever, but it's a farm road. So there's nothing on it. And all the way there, Don's just going, "I need a jug. I need a jug." Now, a jug is a bottle of cognac. And of course, there's nowhere to get one. So, and then we bring him into the house and we're sitting down. Andrew says, "Okay, Don, dinner's ready." He says, "I don't eat." "Oh, okay, fine." So we got off onto, Andrew hated Don for years. She goes out to dinner with him now when she's working in Memphis.
But then you had to drive from the northeast to the studio in Cornwall, which was a bit and then no road up to it. And again, he didn't like that, and you had to put him on a boat. Was that right, on the River Ford?
Well, the thing you couldn't get a car or a truck to the studio. You had to either go in a boat or walk down the railway line. And Don was kind of not impressed by this, but he was impressed by Saturday night in the pub, in the village pub, because the Cornish sing hymns. And they sing them very well, no matter how drunk they are. He loved that because he's a real choir man. Don used to walk into any church in America, pick out 3 girls, and like the Raylettes. He did the choir for the Bangladesh concert for George Harrison.
Did he?
And things like that, yeah. Him and George were big mates.
So when you went into the studio, you had this great collection of songs. The opening track, Shuffleboat River Farewell, it gets the album off to a great start. It's really, really good. And there's obviously Loving Dove. It sounds a bit like the Stones, you might want to argue, with Hindsight. And Stranger builds really great atmosphere. There was no tension between you. You knew the sound you wanted, and he knew the sound that he could get out of you in the band.
Well, yeah. I wouldn't have got him on board if I didn't, put my trust in him.
Yeah.
He was Don Mix. He knew how to get that Don Mix sound. But I mean, that Stranger song was that's about a guy that we went to see a folk singer, a friend of ours, just down the road. And she had this guitar player with her who was okay. And as usual, they were a bit iffy about accommodation. So I said, "I'll just come stay at the farm for all right." And we came here, and he was playing guitar really nicely at the key. And he was picking my guitars up and making these really angry noises. And I think, wish he wouldn't do that. Then in the morning, he didn't want to leave. Sarah got in the car and left him behind because he wouldn't get in the car. And finally, he just got to the thing, "You are leaving." And I basically hurled him onto a train. I bodily threw him onto a train. And I just enlarged that, the Stranger came this morning.
Right.
I just enlarged it and kind of saw it as a movie. So it has a kernel of truth, as usual with my songs. There's a kernel of truth somewhere.
Well, you had Rick Kemp with you again, and Andy Latimer from Camel, who I saw about 3 years ago in Aylesbury, and he's just a phenomenal player, isn't he?
How was he? Because I knew he had cancer.
Yeah, well, I'd actually phoned him and did an interview, and he was in a hotel in Spain, and they were touring the album, whose name escapes me, and he had a sort of a second wind and resurgence, playing in all sorts of places like Hong Kong, and you wouldn't believe it, and I think Scandinavia, and he was great. You had Tim Renwick on this. He played a lot with Al Stewart in sort of the mid-70s. Yeah.
They were just. I mean, I knew Andy because we toured with Camel, so
yeah,
we were like the office. That was the gig. Camel and Michael Chapman. They toured most of Europe.
They were pretty heady.
And Tim was always such a good player.
Yeah. Well, you said that you didn't practice much, but I mean, look, I think you're underselling yourself here. So how did you achieve the level of skill with both electric and acoustic guitar, Michael? I mean, is that innate ability?
You can practice till you're blue in the face, but until you can see the whites of their eyes, that's when you really have to do it. I don't practice. I really don't. And this streaming thing that I've just done, it shows that I haven't done a gig. I didn't do a gig last year because I was in bad condition, and the lockdown thing, there's no gigs to do even if I could have done. And it showed that I haven't played for a year, because what I should have done was like just played solid for a week before the show, and I don't do that kind of thing. It's kind of
But I mean, you started out playing jazz, didn't you?
Yeah.
You must have worked hard in those early days to master it, didn't you?
Not really, because I used to get fired a lot. Because I had a house band at this jazz club in Leesley, Esquire, which was kind of part of the Ronnie Scott circuit, and they'd send Americans and people up there. And they'd turn up with what was known as the book, which was all the songs they were going to play and the chords and things, and they put it on the thing, and I'd say, no use to me, mate. Can't read. And then, but I mean, sometimes it didn't even get that far. It said, the trios, guitar, bass, and drums, sack the guitar player. Because they wanted piano, bass, and drums, not cassettes. So I used to get fired a lot. But I could always hear things incredibly quickly. So I'd say to somebody, you want me to play that? Play me it, run it again. I've got it. It's a facility I've lost. Jazz is a language and a philosophy. It's not a technique. Okay. And unless you do it, you've lost it, and I've lost it. I'm afraid to say. But on the other hand, I stopped playing like somebody else. I wanted to be Kenny Burrell. I wanted to be Grant Green. I wanted to be Django Reinhardt. Then I suddenly thought, stop fucking about. Just play like you. And so that's the reason I play these weird things, because I'm completely self-taught.
I must say,
I didn't know what you have to do with your right hand. Because there was nothing. There was one book, Bert Whedon's Play in a Day. The fucker was lying.
Yeah. I mean, but did you absorb, information about sounds and picking and all that from people around you, whether it was, Ralph McTell or Whiz Jones or John Martin, Davy Graham, Burt
Ralph taught me to claw pick. I was just doing the 4/4 Brunsey thump, just the bass notes. And Ralph taught me to claw pick. He tried to teach me to use a thumb and two fingers, and I still don't do it. I do that, which is not the way to do it. John Martin did that as well, so John could play a bit, Yeah. And if you look at all the players over the years, the right hand they do the best they can. Lightning Hopkins doesn't do it the same way as Django Reinhardt. the right hand is you just get on with it. Whatever, you know, you see the old blues guys, and they'll have weird things. William Tyler has fingernails like that long on his right hand.
Yeah.
William's a wonderful player.
Well, let's move on to the final album of this triple CD, Michael, The Man Who Hated Mornings. Yeah. And Andy Latimer's with you again, Pete Wingfield, Rod Clements, once of Lindisfarne on the bass. Yeah. You said that it was seen as a laid-back album. Did you set out to sort of make it different from Savage Amusement?
No, the songs were different, so they dictated what the album was like. And again, you know, it's just a bunch of mates, and I was lucky in that Mick was in London at the time, not in very good shape, but you know, he came into play. My original idea was for him to co-produce with me, but he wasn't in good condition at all.
You produced it with Max Hole, I think.
Yeah, who was my manager.
Oh, right, okay. How do you think the songs stand up now? You know, 43.
I think they're fine. You know, there's some fantastic things. The fiddle on the Northern Lights by Johnny Van Derrick. I met Johnny because I saw Disley in a folk club in London playing Reinhardt stuff, and Johnny was enjoying himself with it. So I just called him in to do it, you know. And his main job, he was in the string quartet at the Palace Gardens Hotel. And then he'd go out and play jazz. And then he'd go out when he finished playing jazz going, because he's married to a Turkish lady, and the Turks stay up late and play music. And so Johnny would drag me into these Turkish jams at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, something that struck me about Northern Lights was that the acoustic intro that you play was it borrowed by Tracy Chapman on Fast Car? There's a very similarity to that.
Is there? I don't know.
Anyway, it's and you mentioned, I think, Ramsbottom in it. It's about escaping your marriage in Lancashire and making a new start in Hull, isn't it? Really, really good. Yeah. And then cover of a Bob Dylan tune, Ballad in Plain D. I enjoyed that a lot.
Well, I chopped that down to 4 verses because that is a very long song. But I chose the 4 verses that appertain to me and the missus, of the 2 sisters, I love the young. That he could have written that about me and the missus.
I loved while dancing the Pride of Erin. That's sort of about the country dancing that's pretty prevalent in Cornwall, right?
No, that's local. That's in the pub down the road on Sunday nights. They used to have the Greenhead Dance Club, which was sequence dancing. You know, the old social dancing where you got to hold a girl and talk to girls and whatever, which we couldn't do normally. And the thing about that is that I'm nobody's idea of a dancer, but the bar was open an hour longer.
Love it, yeah.
So I was in there, and all these things where you change partners, I'd finish up dancing with great airy ass farmer. Dancing the Pride of Erin. I was doing it wrong.
It's a great record. It's a terrific song. I really enjoyed it, and I listened as well to some of your earlier material on Rainmaker and Fully Qualified Survivor and Window. Just some gorgeous stuff. And I remember reading Melody Maker and seeing the reviews, and they were all positive, which is excellent, but it's going back a way. And then now the critics say, well, Michael Chapman, very underrated. And I sort of think I know what they mean, but I think what the real word is underappreciated. That's
you might be right. You might be right. I mean, things like that never bother me. I don't care.
You don't care?
No, not that bothered. No.
And none of us are getting any younger. How do you find life now, having turned 80, Michael? Can I ask you that?
I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, for nearly 2 years now, I haven't been healthy. I got something I did a tour with BJ Cole and Bridget St. John and Sarah Snout on cello. The people that did the True North album, and I got something in my throat, and every night I walked on stage not knowing whether I could do it or not. Because sometimes I'd open my mouth and nothing would come out, and then it got worse and worse and worse, and I've got a multitude of things that are wrong with me that I won't bore you with. But I mean, I can't drive now, which to me is like, I've had a car since I was 16, for example.
Do you think
my eyes are gone from me?
Have you tried to practice and sing at home at all? I mean, could you do it if the opportunity?
I'm just in the middle of writing a song. I've just started putting it together over the last couple of days. So that's when I picked the guitar up. It's got an inkling that I might get something.
Because nobody knows what's going to happen for live music and so on in the rest of.
No, I mean, I'd like to think. I mean, the people that look after me are talking about doing stuff in September, October. I'd like to think that was possible.
It would be brilliant.
There's people in France, Italy, Austria that want me to go. Now, I'm still not in good condition. I'm breathing better today, but on a bad day, I can hardly, I can't. It takes me. I can hardly get across the room. So performing would be out of the question. But I'd like to think that I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
I'm going to see this. One of the main things wrong with it now is that we have this thing called oxygen transfer, which means the air you take in, the food you eat, is then transferred into oxygen, which powers the muscles. And a normal person, the transfer percentage is probably just short of 90 to 95. I'm 22.
Whoa.
Yeah, which is dangerous.
Yeah.
There's a whole team coming over from Newcastle to see why, because that's always been the problem, and that's the one that people, all the doctors that I've seen, that everything else, have ignored it. I said, look, the main problem, I can't fucking breathe. So anyway, but I'm feeling better. I'm having a good day.
It would be brilliant though if you could get on stage and we could hear you and see you. It would be absolutely sensational, wouldn't it? Hey,
well,
really, you must have.
That's my plan.
Yeah, great.
And I'm the guy that doesn't make plans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I must say, this is a terrific collection of albums. Michael Chapman, The Decca Years, 1974 to 1977. Deal Gone Down, Savage Amusement, and The Man Who Hated Mornings. 50 songs, including the bonus demo tracks on Secret Records. And you can check out Michael on his own website, which is really good. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time today.
No problem.
All the very best. I hope that, there's light at the end of the tunnel with regard to the breathing and so on.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can only get better.
Top man.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. All right.
Loads of things I could ask you about. I just wanted to say, do you remember a lady from Cornwall, Sarah McQuaid?
Yep.
You gave her a guitar. I think she's still got it. I don't know, but
I'll enter it.
Lent her it. That's it. Yeah. Well, I'm still in touch with her. So what shall I tell her?
Well, say hello from me. I mean, I produced Sarah's last album.
What oh wow! Did you? Yes, of course.
The one about digging the hole.
The hole, yeah. Oh wow!
Which is about her son Eli, who digs very large holes for no reason.
I love that album. It was really good. So did you have a little bit of playing on it as well? You did, didn't you?
Very little, because that wasn't the idea.
Yeah. Well, I saw her live, and
Sarah's a terrific guitar player.
Yeah, but she also played that album live on her own and she also bangs a drum at the same time.
And Martin, her tour guy, he's a great guy.